poppin', Kermit?
Hot. Well, then you need to give up the connect and let us handle them, B.
I'm out, Rico. You understand what I'm saying? Look at me.
Was your Uncle Johnny at the funeral?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Him and Preacher was there.
And Preacher was at the funeral, too?
Yeah, he was.
What?
Yeah, he was.
These are demons.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Almost had the gun. His man come out the room and put the gun to my forehead, and I watched him pull the trigger. And my spirit left the body, bro.
When people talk about Paid in Full, the same three names always pop up: Ace, Mitch, and Rico. In the real world, those names connected to Azie Faison, Rich Porter, and Alpo Martinez, three Harlem figures whose rise and downfall turned into street legends that people still whisper about to this day.
What's poppin', Kermit?
I'm out, Rico. You understand what I'm saying? Look at me.
You need to give up the connect and let us handle them, B.
Look, man, we know what's hot on the streets, man. Believe me, man, we out there every day.
But what most never realize is that their stories were only one side of the whole picture. Behind every hustle, every neighborhood rivalry, and every betrayal, there were family members, rivals, and enforcers with stories just as real.
Money making Mitch. Come on, I'm broke, baby. I ain't got no money. I can smell him with money. Even Ray Charles can see you got money.
And sometimes even more unbelievable than anything the movie dared to show. In Paid in Full, one of those shadows came to life through the character Ice, played by the late Ron Cephas Jones. On screen, Ice had that cold, lurking presence in Mitch's home. The quiet uncle sitting in the corner, smoking up his nephew's stash and watching the money stack higher while envy grew in his eyes. But the real story behind that character was tied to Johnny Apple Porter, and his situation was far more unsettling than anything Hollywood put on film. Johnny was Velma Porter's brother, making him the maternal uncle of Rich Porter and 12-year-old Donald Porter, and his name carried a heavy presence in the family long before the world ever heard of Paid in Full. He wasn't some distant relative. This was real family. The same family that visited him while he was locked up, wrote him letters, and welcomed him home with open arms. When he got out, Pat Porter, Rich and Donald's sister, even called him her favorite uncle.
Johnny watched and saw the cars and the jury, because now they started feeling like, is this a soft extortion? Like, why does grown man keep asking me for money?
Huh.
Like, you don't think you should go earn it somewhere? I could put you in a spot.
To the Porters, he was blood, someone they trusted without hesitation. But underneath all those warm memories and tight family ties, Johnny was quietly watching Rich's rise with a twisted kind of jealousy. Rich wasn't just doing well, he was Harlem shining. The cars, the chains, the designer fits, the steady stack of cash. To Johnny, it all looked unreal, almost too good for someone younger to be living right in front of him. Instead of being proud of his nephew, he started feeling like he deserved a piece of that lifestyle. And instead of talking to Rich or trying to get on the right way, Johnny drifted towards something far more disturbing. He built up a plan to take what he wanted by force. But he didn't move solo. Johnny connected himself with the infamous Preacher crew, run by Clarence "Preacher" Heatley. These weren't just any street guys. They were known for being extremely aggressive with their methods, using harsh intimidation and fear to get whatever they wanted.
Apple was the one who brought that situation to my pops, right? And told him that it was easy for him to get the nephew because the nephew goes to school, you know what I'm saying, in the morning, such and such time, and pick him up. Apple told my father that he can get probably $500,000 from Rich. That was the thing there, you know what I'm saying?
That was their whole approach. With Johnny now linked up with them, the group built a strategy that was as cold and calculated as anything Harlem had ever heard about. A setup designed to target someone from their own family circle with no hesitation at all. Johnny and the crew decided to target his own 12-year-old nephew, Donald Porter, hoping to pressure Rich into handing over nearly $500,000. That choice alone showed how far Johnny was willing to go for money, even if it meant turning on his own family. What happened next felt like something out of a nightmare. While the Porter family was terrified, searching everywhere and praying for Donald's safe return, Johnny was standing right there with them, acting like a heartbroken uncle. He kept a straight face, stayed close to the family, and played the role so perfectly that nobody suspected a thing. The situation got even more disturbing when the family received a package containing a piece of physical evidence along with a cassette tape of Donald pleading to come home. Pat Porter grabbed everything and rushed straight to the police, desperate to save her little brother. And the one person who tried to stop her, who argued with her, insisted they keep the authorities out of it, and claimed they could handle it another way, was Johnny himself. He was trying to keep the truth hidden at all costs. And then came one of the coldest parts of the entire story.
Was your Uncle Johnny at the funeral?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Him and Preacher was there.
And Preacher was at the funeral, too?
Yeah, he was.
What?
Yeah, he was.
He was just demons.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Johnny had the nerve to show up at Donald's funeral with Preacher right beside him, standing shoulder to shoulder with the grieving family, acting like he was mourning the same child he helped put in danger. That level of betrayal is almost impossible to understand. For years, nobody knew the full truth. The case just stayed as one of those Harlem stories people whispered about, painful, confusing, and full of missing pieces that nobody could put together. It wasn't until the feds came down hard on Preacher Heatley's crew for a long list of serious charges that everything finally started breaking apart. With the possibility of spending the rest of his life locked up, Johnny did what many people in that world eventually do. He folded. He turned informant. During his plea talks, he finally admitted he had helped set up the kidnapping of Donald Porter and everything that followed after. Because he cooperated, he ended up receiving a 30-year sentence instead of something far harsher. Pat Porter eventually came face to face with him and asked him directly what he had done, and he confirmed it. His excuse was that Preacher's crew threatened his own son, so he claimed he went along under pressure. But to the Porters, no excuse could ever erase what happened. This wasn't a street dispute or a business fallout. This was family. This was an uncle they loved, trusted, and welcomed into their home. The same man they wrote letters to while he was in prison. And he turned around and betrayed a 12-year-old boy from his own bloodline for money he felt he deserved. Johnny Apple Porter became the definition of a wolf in sheep's clothing. In Paid in Full, he appeared through the character Calvin, played by Kevin Carroll. Calvin was that small-time hustler who couldn't stand seeing his own friends shining brighter than him on screen. He came off bitter, jealous, and willing to undercut anyone just to feel equal.
Yo, Calvin, man, why you doing this, man? I can tell that's you. Call that.
But in real life, the story behind Calvin was way more chaotic and far more dangerous. And the truth starts with a man named Kevin Clark. He wasn't just some neighborhood rival trying to push Azie Faison off his spot. Kevin Clark was actually dating Azie's sister. That made him family, or at least close enough that Az treated him like one. When Clark came home after doing time, Az didn't let him struggle for even a minute. He put him on in a major way. Az handed him a brand new convertible Saab, dropped $15,000 cash straight into his hand, and even gave him a block that was moving a whole kilo of product every single week. For most hustlers, that setup would have felt like a blessing, a fresh start, a real chance to level up. But according to Az, Clark's mindset was messed up from the jump. Instead of seeing the opportunity for what it was, Clark started thinking, if he's giving me this, then how much is he really sitting on? That tiny spark of envy slowly turned into something toxic, something that started eating at him every day. And on August 22nd, 1987, everything finally exploded.
There was 3 people. My sister's boyfriend at the time, he set me up, you understand? Try to rob me.
Clark and his crew rolled into the Bronx apartment belonging to Az's aunt, a spot everyone knew was one of Az's stash locations. They showed up masked, prepared, and ready to grab everything they could get their hands on. But in the middle of all the chaos, Az caught a voice he instantly recognized. He called out, "Kev, what you doing, man?" That one line stopped the whole moment cold and exposed the truth Az never thought he'd have to face. His own people turning on him for envy that had been brewing right under his nose. The whole room froze in an instant. Clark panicked, ripped his mask off, and everything flipped from a robbery into full-blown chaos. He yelled out an order that changed the fate of everyone inside, and the place erupted with non-stop blasts, more than 24 rounds tearing through walls, furniture, and bodies as people tried to dive for safety.
Mask on his face, but I recognized the voice. It's my sister's boyfriend. Yo, Kev, what you doing? That's his name, Kev.
When it was over, the scene was heartbreaking. Az's Aunt Myra, Enoch, and 2 close family friends, Joan Blue and Charles Parker, lost their lives right there in the apartment. 3 others were severely hurt, including a 13-year-old girl who somehow survived even after being hit twice in the head. Az himself was struck 9 times, with 2 of those injuries to the head, his leg shattered and his body barely holding on. According to Az, there was another reason behind Clark's bitterness, one that started long before Az became a big name. Kevin once tried to use Az as the middleman to move product to Rich Porter, but Az felt the setup wasn't clean. Something didn't sit right with him, so instead of going through with it, he handed everything back to his sister and told her to return it to Kevin. Az believed that moment planted the resentment that later grew into something explosive. In Paid in Full, the movie switches the story into a tale of street payback. Alpo as Rico hunting down Calvin for what he did. But that's not how it played out in reality. In the real world, it was Azie himself who stepped up and reported what happened. Lying in a hospital bed at Lincoln Hospital, barely conscious and fighting to stay alive, detectives asked him who was responsible.
And it was an incident where he wanted me to give, before he got locked up, he had wanted me to give some drugs to Rich. I gave it back to my sister, and I told him to give it back to him because I felt that dude was crazy, because the situation at that time, he was running from somebody.
And Azie didn't hesitate for even a second. He named Kevin Clark, his sister's boyfriend, the same man he had tried to lift up as the person behind the attack. Clark stayed on the run for a while, bouncing around and hiding out until he finally surrendered to authorities in Philadelphia. The courts did not show him mercy. He was convicted and hit with a staggering sentence of 112 to 125 years to life, making it clear he would never walk free again. But here's where the story gets even deeper. Kevin Clark might have been the one who carried out the betrayal, but the character Calvin in Paid in Full wasn't based on just him. The filmmakers mixed Clark's backstabbing with the legend of another Harlem figure, Henry Rondo Bolden. Rondo was a whole different breed. He wasn't trying to build an empire like Azie or Fat Cat Nichols. His reputation came from tearing empires apart. Alongside his cousin, he gained the nickname Godfathers of Crib Robberies because they were known for hitting major dealers in their own safe spots, moves most people were way too scared to even think about. Rondo didn't care how powerful or dangerous the target was. He robbed Azie, and he even crossed Fat Cat, one of the most respected and intimidating names in New York at that time. He wasn't a strategist or someone chasing long-term power. Rondo lived job to job, score to score, always chasing the next hit with zero concern for the future. His whole life ran on impulse, risk, and a level of fearlessness that made his name spread through the streets like a warning. That's the exact spirit Calvin represents on screen. He's not some genius mastermind. He's an opportunist, someone on the inside who uses his connections to make one aggressive move for a fast payday. By blending Rondo's fearless reputation with Kevin Clark's betrayal, the filmmakers created a character that captured one of the harshest realities of the street world.
They pushed their way inside. They rounded up 6 friends, one of them a 13-year-old girl. They shoved them back into a rear bedroom, made them lie on the floor, and then pumped 25 shots into the backs of their heads and bodies.
Odds are Henry Bolden and Ronald Simmons will never set foot on a city street again. The brazen killers were sentenced to 112 years to life for the execution-style murders of 3 and the shooting of 3 other Bronx people.
Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. It can come from the people closest to you or from wolves who never cared about you from the start. In Paid in Full, we see that story unfold through the eyes of Ace, played with a cool, controlled intensity by Wood Harris. Ace wasn't the loudest, he wasn't dripping in flashy energy, and he wasn't out looking for chaos. He was the architect, smart, patient, and moving with quiet precision while everyone else showed off. And that's exactly who Azie Faison, AZ, really was in real life. Azie was born on November 10th, 1964 in the Bronx, and life didn't hand him an easy start. When he was just 6, everything changed. His family's apartment went up in flames, forcing them to grab what they could and move to Harlem's Sugar Hill. That move meant 9 people. Azie, his parents, and 7 siblings all squeezed into a 1-bedroom apartment. They survived on public assistance, stretching every dollar and doing whatever they could to get by. For young Azie, it always felt like the whole world was pressing down on him, like the odds were against him from day one. School wasn't where he felt he belonged. He dropped out in 9th grade and picked up work at Junior's Dry Cleaners, trying to help his family while figuring out his next move. The pay was only $75 a week for long hours, and there was no way that kind of money could lift his family out of struggle. Azie knew he needed something bigger, something that could actually change his situation. Then came the movie that sparked something inside him, Scarface. When it dropped in 1983, it didn't just inspire Azie, it inspired a whole generation of young hustlers who were tired of feeling stuck.
I've been shot in the head, baby. My body different.
Seeing Tony Montana rise from nothing to build a powerful empire hit Azie right in the heart. Sitting in that theater, he saw himself, a kid from the bottom who wanted more than survival. He walked out feeling like Tony's hunger and drive were the blueprint he had been searching for. Life ended up handing him an unexpected opening. While working at the cleaners, a Dominican customer named Lulu, who would later become his main supplier, accidentally left something valuable hidden in his pants pocket. Most people would have kept it and said nothing, but Azie handed it right back. That honesty shocked Lulu, and instead of taking it, he told Azie to keep it. That single moment flipped Azie's whole world around. Azie didn't just move what he was given, he transformed it with what he later called an accidental stroke of genius. At the time, half grams were selling for $100. Azie cut the price in half, dropped it to $50, and within days, the buzz spread through Harlem like wildfire. Everybody wanted what Azie was offering. Practically overnight, he went from folding shirts at the cleaners to becoming one of the most talked about up-and-comers in Harlem's street scene. The money started flowing fast, but Azie didn't lose his mind with it. He built structure.
I felt if I worked full-time, I'll make more money, you feel me? But my salary never changed. I still got $75 a week. And that's all I ever made in that cleaners for $75 a week.
His first big move was the Green Door, an after-hours spot that cleared more than $50,000 a week. But his real masterpiece, the one people still whisper about, was the jukebox. On the outside, it looked innocent, a simple storefront full of arcade machines, a chill hangout for local kids. But behind the scenes, it was one of the smoothest fronts Harlem had ever seen. Azie pushed his signature $10 vials, GP35s, through that spot, and he hid stacks of cash inside the game machines like it was nothing. The whole operation ran so clean, so organized, it was pulling in hundreds of thousands every single week. Harlem had seen plenty of hustlers before, but Azie was moving on a level that felt almost unreal. With his name rising, he eventually crossed paths with a young, ambitious hustler out of East Harlem, Alpo Martinez. They met after a basketball game at Rucker Park. Azie wasn't quick to trust new faces. He didn't like bringing outsiders into his circle, especially at a time when things were moving heavy. Back then, his right-hand man, Rich Porter, was locked up in the Bronx House Detention Center. So Azie did what any smart operator would. He reached out to Rich for advice. He asked for his take on Alpo, and Rich co-signed him without hesitation. That one stamp of approval was all Azie needed.
I met Lulu, and then he gave me some, he gave me some work. I took it to the streets, and next thing you know, I'm in the game, bro. I'm in the game overnight success.
From there, the trio was officially born. Azie, Rich, and Alpo, the holy trinity of Harlem hustlers. Rich and Alpo handled the flashy side of the life. Dapper Dan gear, BMWs, chains, the full Harlem superstar vibe. Meanwhile, Azie stayed the quiet architect, running things from behind the scenes while the others lit up the streets. Azie always stayed in the background, the quiet strategist, while everyone else was out playing loud, risky moves. He thought long-term, planned every step, and moved like a chess player in a world full of people playing checkers. But in that life, every blessing comes with a shadow attached to it. On August 21st, 1987, Azie faced the darkest moment of his entire journey. His stash apartment, which belonged to his Aunt Joan Blue, was hit, and this wasn't just a break-in. It turned into something far worse and unforgettable. The person leading the attack was his sister's boyfriend, Kevin Clark. 6 people were shot at close range, and 3 of them lost their lives, including Azie's Aunt Azie himself was hit 9 times, 2 shots striking his head and 1 blowing apart his leg. By all logic, he wasn't supposed to survive, yet somehow, he did. Azie later said he felt like his spirit almost drifted away that night, like his soul stepped out for a moment before snapping back. That near-fatal moment, combined with the tragic loss of his partner Rich Porter in 1990, was enough to push Azie out of the streets for good. While lying in his hospital bed, detectives asked him what happened, and he told them straight, Kevin Clark was the attacker. That choice gave him a label that some people have stubbornly thrown at him ever since, the snitch tag. But Azie pushed back hard on that narrative. He didn't testify to dodge charges. He wasn't turning on his team. He identified the man who tried to take him out and harm his family. His lawyer even secured him full immunity for any past street activity, meaning his old actions couldn't be used against him in court. To Azie, the situation was simple. He wasn't cooperating against partners or trying to save himself from a case. He was naming the person responsible for trying to destroy his whole world. There was a major difference between what Azie did and what people connected to informants like Alpo. Azie made it clear, naming the person who tried to take out his family was not the same thing as cooperating for personal gain. After stepping away from the streets, Azie moved his focus towards storytelling and truth-telling.
His man come out the room and put the gun to my forehead, and I watched him pull the trigger. And my spirit left the body, bro.
In 1989, he created Mob Style, one of the first hip-hop groups to blend real hustler life with conscious messages. He later wrote the original screenplay for what eventually became Paid in Full, originally calling the script Trapped. He released his autobiography Game Over to set the record straight, and he has always been outspoken about how the movie twisted his story, turning warnings into hype, glorifying things that shouldn't be glorified, and making him look like something he wasn't. Today, Azie's mission is simple: stop the next generation from repeating the same mistakes. One of his strongest warnings sums everything up. Don't try to repeat Paid in Full the way we repeated Scarface. In the film, Azie doesn't appear as a face or name, but if you know the real history, you know his presence is everywhere. And tied to that history is someone whose shadow looms even darker: Wayne "Silk" Perry. He was the ghost behind the story, the force that shaped Alpo's transformation from a flashy East Harlem kid into someone with serious reach across the country. Some even claim that without Wayne Perry, there wouldn't be a Paid in Full tale to tell at all.
Ultimately, the guys get caught. You end up taking the stand in the trial?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
Yes,
then
sir.
the surviving people in the room also take the stand, right?
Yes, sir.
Wayne Anthony Perry was born on November 14, 1962 in Washington, D.C. He grew up in Southwest on L Street in the 203 neighborhood, one of the toughest environments in the entire city. His nickname Silk came from his family, a reference to how smooth he was with his words. But behind that charm was a reputation that quickly became legendary across D.C. His path into crime started extremely early. By the age of 12, he was already involved in dangerous situations that most adults couldn't even imagine. By 16, he had escalated to high-level robberies and major street activity. School didn't last long for him either. After a heated altercation with his baseball coach at Wilson High, he left school entirely and drifted deeper into the streets. Wayne Perry's story wasn't about building an empire like Azie or Rich Porter. It was about raw force, intimidation, and a street presence that made his name echo through D.C. long before Hollywood ever touched the story. Perry beat the coach unconscious with a bat, and that incident got him banned from every public school in D.C. From there, his reputation only grew darker and more extreme. In 1984, a local crew tried to jump him on a corner. Perry fought back with terrifying intensity, striking one of the attackers with a bat right in front of police officers. Because he was attacked first, the charge was reduced to manslaughter, and he served only a few years in Lorton's Youth Center, one of the roughest facilities in the region, known for shaping already dangerous people into something even tougher. When he came home in 1987, Silk wasn't the same person. He had transformed into a full-time enforcer with a chilling signature style. No drive-bys, no spraying randomly. He would walk right up on someone and handle things face-to-face, often making sure the job was finished with absolute finality. His reputation spread fast. Dealers in D.C. feared him so much that some paid him just to keep peace and avoid any issues. Others wouldn't even wear expensive jewelry around him, scared it might trigger envy or tension. His path crossed with Alpo Martinez in 1989. At the time, Alpo was fresh in D.C. and had already been targeted once, barely surviving. He needed serious protection, someone with presence, someone whose name alone could clear the room. The introduction came through a 15-year-old up-and-comer, Shelton "Shorty Pop" Watkins. From the Go-Go Group Junkyard Band, Perry was sitting in jail on an attempted assault charge with bail set at $10,000. Alpo paid it in full, right on the spot. That instant loyalty sealed their bond. Alpo had the product and the cash. Wayne had the force, the reputation, and the willingness to step into situations most men ran from. Together, they became one of the most feared partnerships the streets of Washington and Harlem had ever witnessed. They ran D.C. with pure intimidation, Alpo calling the shots, and Perry handling every problem that came their way. Any rival, any threat, any sign of disrespect.
This guy, Wayne Perry, was considered the Michael Jordan of the murder game.
Wayne Perry was one of our most prolific killers in D.C.
Perry handled it personally, face to face, with a level of fearlessness that had the entire city whispering his name. When Alpo wanted payback on the people who targeted him earlier, Perry stepped in and handled the situation quietly but decisively. And when Alpo's rival Matthew Blake became an issue, Shorty Pop stepped up in December 1989 and took care of the problem after Alpo gave the signal. One of the most infamous situations they were tied to involved a witness named Alveda Hopkins. She had agreed to testify against Perry in a case connected to James "Frog" Henson. That decision put her in danger. According to reports, Alpo drove their notorious van, blasting NWA's "AB is AB," while Perry confronted Hopkins directly, using force to silence her permanently. But things didn't stop there. When Brooklyn figure C.I.O. Benson publicly disrespected Alpo, they planned a setup after a basketball game at Kennedy Park. Hundreds of people were outside that day. Alpo gave Shorty Pop a simple nod, and Shorty approached Benson and delivered a single fatal blow to the forehead. Broad daylight, huge crowd, and nobody said a word to authorities afterward. Perry's reputation reached a level that even other dangerous figures couldn't comprehend. In one story, he told an associate, Thomas Dozier, to deal with a young woman named Evelyn Carter simply because she rejected him. Dozier confronted her and used force against her, hitting her twice in the chest. When Dozier returned to report what happened, Perry was furious. It wasn't enough to satisfy him. To prove a point in the coldest way imaginable, Perry walked up to a random man using a payphone and delivered a single fatal headshot, right there without hesitating, as everyone around froze in fear. This was the kind of reputation Wayne Perry carried. Extreme, unpredictable, and feared on a level DC had never seen before.
This kid had DC in fear. I mean, this kid just didn't care. He was murdering everything that was moving.
When Poe hooked up with Wayne, that was the best thing that happened to Poe.
That's how you take somebody out, he said. Those words showed exactly how far gone he was. Their reign finally collapsed in 1991. Alpo was taken into custody on November 7th, facing the harshest possible charges for 14th Street eliminations. The feds had him boxed in from every angle, and that's when Alpo cracked. He switched sides and became a federal informant, but the name the government wanted more than anyone was Wayne Perry. Alpo handed them everything: dates, names, setups, movements. With Alpo's testimony backing the case, Perry was convicted and hit with 5 consecutive life sentences. No chance for parole. He ended up in ADX Florence, the Supermax in Colorado, one of the most locked down facilities in the entire country. Years later, during an interview with FBI agent Dan Riley, Perry admitted that the real number of people he had taken out was over 100. Since then, he has converted to Islam and now goes by Koi Shaka Zulu L. In Paid in Full, he appears through the character Mitch, the smooth-talking, charismatic street star played by Harlem's own Mickey Pfeiffer. But the real-life Rich Porter was way more than a movie role. In Harlem, he wasn't just some character, he was the blueprint. The kid everybody watched, everybody admired, everybody tried to model themselves after. To the streets, Rich was Money Rich, a legend moving in real time. Richard Thomas Porter was born on July 26, 1965, right in Harlem. He was the oldest of 3 kids raised by his mother, Velma. His younger siblings were Patricia and William Donald. And compared to many kids growing up in Harlem during the 70s, the Porters were tight-knit, respectful, and full of hope. Rich wasn't born into chaos. He grew up in a household where family meant everything. Rich's home life was solid for the most part, but the streets were always right there.
You know what, man? I think I need to go out tonight, man. All right? Meet me at the top. We're gonna party for real.
Calling his name, pulling him in with that Harlem rhythm. By most accounts, Rich had stepped into the game early. Azie Faison, his lifelong friend, swore Rich was already moving product by the age of 12, while others said he began with harmless little hustles, selling fake hash made of sage and eggs to kids from Jersey, or moving small joints for $1 each. However it kicked off, by the time he hit 16, he was already operating on a whole different level. That same year, he pulled up in a brand new black BMW 528E, blacked out from top to bottom. And that right there set the tone for who Rich Porter was becoming. He wasn't just another hustler, he was an icon, the definition of Harlem style and swagger. Police later tried to play his impact down, labeling him a mid-level crack dealer who made around $50,000 a week. But the streets laughed at that number. Everyone who knew Rich knew he was moving far bigger than that.
Rich Porter actually started selling initially at age 12. So that was like around 1977.
Rich was everywhere, never wearing the same fit twice, keeping more than a dozen luxury cars parked in a Manhattan garage, and stepping out in full Dapper Dan creations like it was nothing. Him and Alpo basically became Dapper Dan's unofficial models, rocking looks so sharp and unique that rappers like LL Cool J later copied them. Rich had the glow, the presence, the energy. He made Harlem look like a movie every time he stepped outside. But behind all the shine, something dark was waiting. And it didn't come from a rival crew or someone on the block. It came from within his own family circle, a twist nobody could have predicted. On December 5th, 1989, Rich's younger brother, 12-year-old Donald, left home for school. And that moment would change the entire Porter family forever. It was supposed to be a simple walk, 4 blocks to school, but Donald never made it. He was taken off the street, and not long after, the family received a chilling phone call demanding $500,000 for his safe return. The kidnappers first wanted $500,000, then dropped it to $350,000 to prove they were serious. They instructed the family to go to a McDonald's on 125th and Broadway. Inside a coffee cup was something that shattered the entire family: a small piece of Donald's finger, one of his rings, and a cassette tape. On the tape, you could hear Donald's frightened voice pleading, "They cutted my finger off. Please help me get the money. I love you, Mommy. Tell Pat I love her." It was the kind of cruelty that even Harlem, a place used to see in hard times, couldn't ignore. People talked about it everywhere. It felt different, heavier, too close to home. but the family didn't yet know the darkest part. This whole nightmare was set up by someone from inside their circle, their own uncle, Johnny Apple Porter.
And they wanted how much? Like $500,000 or something?
Yeah, that's what it was stated to have been.
And then to show that they were serious, they actually cut off his little brother's
The very
finger.
next day. But they didn't send it to him, but they left it in a McDonald's on Broadway in 125th Street and called his house and said there's something to go look. And he sent somebody over there, and that's what they came back with.
Pat, Rich's sister, later revealed that when she ran to call the police after they received the package, Johnny was the one trying to stop her. He acted like he wanted to handle it another way, but in reality, he was trying to keep his role hidden. Rich, desperate to save his little brother, went to his supplier, Richard Fritz Simmons, Harlem's well-known consignment king. Fritz fronted him 30 kilos to help put together the ransom, showing just how serious the situation had become. But Rich didn't have time on his side. Police were watching the family closely. The feds were circling the streets, and pressure was building fast. With everything closing in, Rich turned to the one person he thought would always stand beside him, the person he believed he could trust without question. Alpo Martinez. That was the person Rich trusted, and that decision ended up costing him everything. On January 3rd, 1990, Alpo lured Rich into a van with his associate, Big Head Gary. Alpo had convinced himself that Rich had been overcharging him on product prices, and when the moment came, he gave the nod. Rich was struck in the head and chest, and his body was left near Orchard Beach in the Bronx. He was only 24 years old when authorities found him. He still had $2,239 cash in his pocket. Azie Faison later remembered seeing Alpo that same night, scratches all over his face. And the next morning, when the news broke that Rich was gone, Alpo pulled up, shed a couple of tears in front of everyone, then drove off like nothing happened. He even had the nerve to show up at Rich's wake, signing his name in big, bold letters in the guest book like he wasn't involved at all. Years later, Alpo openly admitted what he had done. He said it wasn't personal, it was business. With Rich no longer around, the kidnappers realized the ransom wasn't coming. Donald never made it home either. He was beaten and left less than a mile from where they abandoned his brother. The story of Rich Porter is short, tragic, and heartbreaking, but his legacy never disappeared. He became a symbol of Harlem's glow, ambition, and danger all wrapped into one. A legend whose name still echoes through the streets decades later.
Alpo gets out with his man, I guess that was Gary. Shake hands. I'm like, damn, what happened to your face, bro? Scratches on his face. He said, nah, my girl out in DC, she bugging out. I said, damn, them shits look fresh, man.
Harlem still speaks Rich Porter's name with respect, almost like royalty. Hip-hop turned him into a permanent part of culture. Jay-Z, 50 Cent, Meek Mill, The Game. Rappers from every era have dropped his name in their verses. To this day, the Prince of Harlem lives on through the stories, the myths, and the music. In Paid in Full, Lulu appears as the smooth Colombian supplier played by Isaiah Morales, the guy who changes Ace's whole life with one bag of product forgotten in a pair of pants. It makes for a clean, cinematic moment. But the real story behind Lulu was way deeper, way riskier, and way more revealing about how the street world actually operated. The real Lulu wasn't just some faceless connect. Some people say he was Colombian, others swear he was Dominican, but everyone agrees on one thing: he was plugged in on a serious level. And yes, the dry cleaner story did happen. Azie Faison really did find product left in Lulu's clothes and returned it without touching a thing. That honesty made Lulu trust him immediately. But AZ later explained their first real meeting didn't even happen at the cleaners. It went down at a pool hall on 157th Street. From that point forward, Lulu wasn't just a supplier, he became the connect. He was giving AZ top-tier fish scale, stamped with a scorpion, pure, powerful, and cleaner than anything the average hustler could get their hands on. The quality was unbeatable. The price was nearly impossible to compete with. And while everybody else was paying sky-high rates, AZ was getting the type of deals most hustlers could only dream about.
How much is worth? 25,000. Damn, that's good, okay?
The real Lulu wasn't just a faceless connect.
Lulu wasn't just a character. He was a reminder of how connections, timing, and trust shaped everything in the real Harlem streets. Lulu was fronting AZ product for as low as $13,000 a kilo, and the craziest part was this: it was all on consignment. No upfront cash, no buy-in, no risk. That meant AZ could flood Harlem with top-tier product without spending a single dollar of his own. It was like Lulu handed him the street version of a cheat code. And unlike the cold, distant figure shown in the movie, the real Lulu was shockingly loyal, almost to a dangerous level. When AZ was attacked and hit 9 times during the 1987 robbery, Lulu did something almost no major supplier would ever dare to do. He went to visit him in Lincoln Hospital. To see AZ, Lulu had to walk straight into the precinct, get fingerprinted, get photographed, and willingly put himself on law enforcement's radar. For someone operating at his level, that move was unheard of. It showed just how much trust and respect he had for AZ. But in the street world, loyalty doesn't always protect you.
But I found some shit in his pocket, and I gave it back to him. He's like, nah, keep that. And then one thing led to the next. I took that to the streets, and that's how we became connected, bro.
The game has a way of eating its own, no matter how careful you think you are. Shortly after AZ got out of the hospital, Lulu stopped by his mom's house. He told AZ he was making one last major move, a huge deal. And after that, he was done for good. He wanted to walk away clean and disappear from the life. AZ believes that decision is what cost Lulu everything. He was about to receive a massive shipment, rumored to be around 100 keys, and he let a younger guy in his circle know about it. That subordinate saw an opportunity too big to ignore. Instead of staying loyal, he turned on Lulu, took his life, and tried to seize the entire operation for himself. Unlike the movie, where Lulu's fate comes early, in real life, his end came after AZ's shooting, when everyone thought he was about to retire peacefully. Instead, the game claimed another giant who trusted the wrong person at the wrong moment.
And he has some crazy connect, where he has as many kilos as he needs.
Give it you? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It was another domino crashing down in the fall of Harlem's biggest empire. In Paid in Full, the most desperate moment comes when Mitch needs $500,000 to save his little brother. In the movie, it's Ace who shows up with the product to save the day. But in real life, that lifeline didn't come from Ace at all. It came from Richard Fritz Simmons, one of the most respected and mysterious figures Harlem ever produced. Fritz was born on October 8, 1957 in Charleston, South Carolina. Like many families in the 1970s, his people packed up and moved north, hoping for better opportunities in New York City. They landed in Harlem, settling on West 112th Street. Back then, Harlem was a place of extremes, full of culture, music, and style, while also struggling with heroin, poverty, and constant tension. For a kid like Fritz, the streets weren't just around him. They were shaping his entire future. His introduction into the life came from someone nobody would expect, a nurse. But this wasn't an ordinary nurse. On the block, she was known as Queen Bee, a woman who ran a full heroin operation right out of the same building Fritz lived in. She saw potential in the young Fritz and pulled him in under her wing. She taught him how the business worked, who to trust, who to avoid, how to move product cleanly, how to operate without drawing heat, and Fritz learned fast, real fast. Under Queen Bee's guidance, Fritz went from rookie to certified earner, moving so much heroin that he was pulling in up to $60,000 a week, numbers that made him a rising star in Harlem long before most people even knew his name. But in the streets, every partnership comes with an expiration date. Queen Bee eventually fell victim to the same poison she had been selling, leaving Fritz to step out on his own and build something even bigger. This is where Fritz's legend truly begins, and where the real story of Harlem's underground economy shifts into a whole new chapter. Her slipping into cocaine use shattered their partnership, and Fritz broke off to build his own path, but his rise didn't come without scars. During a dispute over a bad batch of product, Fritz was hit 5 times, a moment that easily could have ended everything for him. Instead, it became the turning point of his entire story. Once he recovered, Fritz made a move almost nobody in Harlem had ever pulled off. He secured a direct pipeline to the Medellin cartel. That connection didn't just elevate his operation, it changed the entire landscape. Fritz didn't become just another dealer, he became the dealer. And it wasn't only about what he sold, but how he moved it. They called him the consignment king for a reason. Most suppliers demanded cash up front. You pay before you play. But Fritz flipped the whole system. He fronted kilos, letting hustlers move the product first and pay him back later. It was risky, sure, but Fritz had a gift. He knew how to read people like a book. He could spot loyalty, fear, greed, and ambition with one look. The gamble paid off, big. Dealers from all 5 boroughs, even crews from surrounding states, trusted Fritz more than anyone. At his peak, he was moving 300 to 500 kilos a month. That's international level weight, the kind only major organizations move. And he supplied the biggest names Harlem ever produced. Rich Porter, Azie Faison, Alpo Martinez, and countless others whose reputations defined an entire era. But while his clients lived loud, flashy, and wild, Fritz stayed in the shadows. He didn't want fame, he didn't want the spotlight. He moved with silence, precision, and mystery. The ghost in the machine, the man everyone depended on but rarely ever saw.
When you first saw him you out, what did he give you?
He gave me and Kevin about maybe 4 or 5 ounces of this was some of the best I ever touched.
While Alpo was showing off and Rich was stepping out in full Dapper Dan drip, Fritz was still cruising around in a regular Nissan Maxima, living in the same modest apartment on 112th Street. His half-sister Sheila Harrison later said that if you pulled up on the block with a flashy car, Fritz or one of his guys would politely but firmly tell you to move it. And it wasn't just about staying low-key, it was who Fritz was. For all his power, he never stopped being a neighborhood dude. He was known for giving back, quietly helping struggling families with rent, groceries, school clothes, whatever they needed. People in Harlem saw him as a kind of modern-day Robin Hood. Humble, generous, disciplined. He didn't need to brag or show off. He didn't need to talk loud. His actions did all the talking for him. But Harlem was full of wolves waiting for any slip-up. Crews like the Wild Cowboys came after Fritz and his circle multiple times. They never managed to get him, but the danger still got close. His right-hand man, Charles Chucky Kane, wasn't so lucky. Chucky lost his life after Fritz barely escaped a kidnapping attempt. It was a harsh reminder that no matter how smart you moved, no matter how disciplined you were, the streets always had a bite waiting for you. And then, just like that, Fritz's reign came to an end, not with a loud showdown, but with silence. In 1991, at only 33 years old, he was gone. No headlines, no dramatic police raid, no spotlight, just gone. To this day, the exact cause of his death is unclear. Some reports claim he contracted HIV from a blood transfusion after being hospitalized for a gunshot wound. Others say different things. Nothing has ever been confirmed. A ghost came in quietly and he left the exact same way. Others, including his sister, Evelyn Simmons, believe he was poisoned. And to this day, nobody can say for sure what truly happened. What is certain is this: in more than a decade of being Harlem's quiet kingmaker, Richard Fritz Simmons was never arrested, not once. In Paid in Full, the character who stole the spotlight was Rico, played by Harlem rapper Cameron in his acting debut. Rico was unforgettable, flashy, wild, unpredictable, and willing to do whatever it took to stay on top. That energy came straight from the real-life figure behind the character, Alpo Martinez. Alpo's story starts far from the glam and shine he later became known for. Born on June 8, 1966, in East Harlem, Spanish Harlem, he grew up in the East River houses. His father wasn't around, so his mother raised him on her own, doing everything she could to keep him away from the streets. She signed him up for the Boys and Girls Club, sent him out of the city during summers through the Fresh Air Fund, where he stayed with a suburban family, the Clintons, who remembered him as a polite, likable kid. For a moment, Alpo even walked around in a cadet uniform talking about wanting to become a Marine. On paper, it looked like he had a real chance to choose a different future.
Hey, get shot every day, B. You be aight. You tough, right?
But Harlem's pull was strong, stronger than anything anyone could have imagined. By his early teens, Alpo was already drifting into the streets, doing small hustles and petty crimes to get money. The change was slow, but steady, and once he tasted that fast-paced Harlem lifestyle, he never looked back. One of Alpo's earliest hustles was wild. He would toss trash cans onto the FDR Drive to force traffic jams, then move through the gridlock hitting stuck drivers for whatever he could grab. By 13, he stepped into the heroin game, working under a neighborhood dealer named Petaway. And by 15, he had already built a reputation as a fearless stick-up kid under the guidance of a seasoned Harlem hustler named Randy Love. Alpo was Puerto Rican, but his complexion had people assuming he was black, something he used to his advantage. He would slip into Dominican or Colombian drug spots, act like he didn't understand any Spanish, then sit quietly, watching and listening, scouting for the perfect moment to make a move. His hunger was obvious even back then. He wanted more, and he wasn't shy about it. When Rich Porter got locked up, Alpo saw an opening. He approached Azie Faison at Rucker Park and asked to be brought into the circle. Rich vouched for him from behind bars, and AZ decided to give him a chance. At first, Alpo had to prove he could follow orders, breaking down bricks into vials, handling small tasks, and showing loyalty, patience, and discipline. But Alpo wasn't built to stay small. His ambition was too loud. He rose quickly, earning AZ's trust to the point where AZ let him run the stash house, making Alpo both the muscle and the manager. That was the moment everything shifted, because once Alpo got real access, his rise went from fast to unstoppable. His big break came when AZ shut down the jukebox spot on 145th Street because the heat was getting too heavy. None of AZ's lieutenants wanted to take over. It was considered a liability, a setup waiting to happen. But Alpo, he saw opportunity.
He's behind me. I get out the car, he get off the bike, he greet me, say, yo, I'm Alpo. I said, what's good, bro? He said, yo, I used to work with Rich, man, before, you know, he got locked up, man. I'm just trying to see if me and you could get together. And Rich gonna call me. He called me every morning. When he called me, I asked him what's good, and if he say, let's go, no problem, we can make something happen, bro. Rich called me the next day. I said, yo, your man, dude named Al. He said, yeah, it's my man. Look out for him.
Where everyone else saw danger, he saw a gold mine sitting wide open. He stepped in, claimed the spot, built his own crew, and made sure the whole neighborhood knew it was his. And to send a message, he reportedly dealt with 2 stick-up kids who tried to hit the place, handling the situation in a way that made the block understand he wasn't the one to test. After that, Alpo wasn't just a soldier anymore, he was a boss. When Rich Porter came home from prison, he and Alpo connected instantly. They moved like brothers, inseparable, always together, always plotting the next play. And the trio of Azie, Rich, and Alpo represented 3 completely different street philosophies. Azie stayed quiet and strategic. Rich was the stylish superstar with Harlem glow. Alpo was the wild card, charming 1 minute, terrifying the next. Alpo could switch up instantly. He'd embarrass smaller dealers, intimidate anyone who stepped wrong, and once even threatened to throw his own crew member out of a 2nd-story window for stealing from him. His temper was unpredictable, and everyone around him knew it. By 1988, Alpo wanted more than Harlem. When DC kingpin Rayful Edmond fell, it left a major power gap in the nation's capital. Alpo moved in fast, ready to grab the lane for himself. But DC wasn't Harlem. It was harsher, more unforgiving, more chaotic. Alpo learned that the hard way in 1989 when he was set up and shot, barely escaping with his life. That close call shook him in a way nothing else had. It made him realize he needed real protection, not just a crew. And in DC, there was nobody more feared or more respected than Wayne "Silk" Perry. Perry was sitting in jail on a $10,000 bail, and Alpo was ready to make a move that would change both of their lives forever. Alpo paid that $10,000 bail without blinking, and that move sparked a partnership built completely on fear and power. With Perry standing next to him, Alpo suddenly had the kind of muscle most hustlers could only dream about, an enforcer who would confront witnesses, rivals, or anybody who tried to block the way. But the streets have a funny way of turning brothers into enemies. Over time, Alpo convinced himself that Rich Porter wasn't being honest with him. He believed Rich was charging him extra for product and lying about where he got it from. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. Alpo let suspicion take over. Then came the tragedy that flipped Harlem upside down. Rich's younger brother, Donald, had been kidnapped, and Rich was desperate. He took 30 kilos on consignment from Fritz Simmons and went to Alpo for help moving it fast. Instead of helping him, Alpo betrayed him. On January 3rd, 1990, Alpo and his associate Garrett "Big Head" Gary picked Rich up in a van. Alpo confronted him about the supposed lies Rich denied everything. Alpo gave Gary a signal, and Rich was hit twice, dropping him instantly. But when they went to move his body, Rich let out a faint sound. Shocked, Alpo grabbed the gun and delivered one final shot to end it. They left Rich's body near Orchard Beach. Then Alpo had the audacity to show up at Rich's wake and sign his name in huge, bold letters in the guest book like nothing happened. By 1991, the law closed in. The FBI arrested Alpo in DC on November 7th. He was facing charges connected to 14 street eliminations and the possibility of the harshest penalty the system could hand out. And that's when Alpo made the move that permanently destroyed his reputation. He flipped. He became a federal informant, turning over every detail he had. And the person who got hit hardest by his testimony, Wayne "Silk" Perry, the same man who once protected him with absolute loyalty, his former right-hand man, Wayne Perry, was given 5 consecutive life sentences, locked away forever.
I was asking him like, yo, Rich, where did you get that coat from, man? That was good, because I wanted to make him comfortable. That was good as a He's like, I got it from my connect. From there, I knew he was lying. I turned to my little man. I gave him the nod. Once I gave him the nod, my little man spent, because he was short so he could stand up in the van. Next thing you heard was the 2 gunshots, bang, bang.
While Alpo walked away with just 35 years after serving 25, he was released in 2015 under witness protection, living up in Maine under the name Abraham Rodriguez. But Alpo could never sit still. By 2017, he had ditched protection completely. Back in Harlem, back on social media, back in the spotlight, like he hadn't just shaken the entire East Coast with his testimony. He gave interviews, popped out on bikes, and tried to rewrite his legacy, insisting he wasn't a snitch, but a survivor who made the smartest move possible. But Harlem never forgets. And it definitely never forgives. On Halloween night, 2021, Alpo was driving his Dodge Ram through Harlem when his truck was struck with multiple rounds. At 55 years old, Alpo's story ended violently on the same streets where it began. But the motive, that stunned everybody. It wasn't some long-awaited revenge or a street legend settling an old score. According to police, it came down to a petty road rage argument with a 27-year-old named Shaquem Parker, who felt disrespected when Alpo brushed past him on a motorcycle. Parker was arrested, but later acquitted in July 2024, leaving Alpo's passing just as murky, complicated, and chaotic as the rest of his life. Harlem remembers the rise, the fall, the legends, and the shadows behind Paid in Full. These weren't just characters, they were real people, real stories, real consequences. If you enjoyed breaking down the truth behind the movie, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another deep dive into the stories that shaped the culture. See you on the next video.